It was a cold winter morning in the city. People rushed in and out of the big glass doors of Royal City Bank, holding coffee in one hand and phones in the other. The place was busy. Everyone seemed too important, too fast, too loud. Then quietly, an old man stepped into the bank. His name was Mr. Elijah. He wore an old brown coat, the collar worn from years of use. His shoes were dusty, and he held a small cloth bag close to his chest. His steps were slow but steady. There was kindness in his eyes and peace in his smile. As he walked toward the line, he nodded politely at the bank guard and softly said, "Good morning." The guard didn't reply. Elijah joined the line and waited. Others came after him, but somehow they were served first. When he stepped forward, a young teller said, "Please wait, sir," and waved the next customer over. Elijah didn't complain. He simply nodded and stepped back. People around him stared. Some looked at him with confusion, some with irritation. A group of employees near the counter whispered and laughed quietly. One of them said, "What's a man like him doing here? He looks like he's lost." Mr. Elijah stood tall. He was not lost. He had come with a purpose. After a long wait, he finally reached the counter again. The young teller, a girl named Tricia, looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Yes?" she said, not hiding her annoyance. "I need to check my account balance, please," Elijah said softly, handing over a small piece of paper with some numbers written on it. Tricia glanced at the note, then looked at his clothes. "Do you even have an account here, sir?" she asked with a smirk. Mr. Elijah nodded calmly. "Yes, my son helped me open it." She rolled her eyes. "Okay, give me your ID." Elijah reached into his bag and slowly pulled out his old wallet. Inside was a government ID and a small photo of a boy, his son, smiling with him years ago. Tricia looked at the ID, then back at him. "Wait here," she said, walking off with the ID. Minutes passed. Mr. Elijah stood quietly at the counter. From the back office, a tall man with glasses and a sharp suit came out. It was the bank manager, Mr. Douglas. He looked at Elijah as if he were looking at a problem, not a person. "Sir," he said firmly, "we're having trouble finding your account. Are you sure you came to the right bank?" Elijah replied, "Yes, sir. My son set it up. He said I could come here any time if I needed help." The manager frowned. "Do you know how much is in this account?" Elijah paused, thinking, "I don't remember the number, but it should be enough." That was the wrong answer. Tricia laughed quietly behind the counter. Another staff member whispered, "He's probably trying to scam someone." The manager sighed loudly, now speaking loudly so everyone could hear. "Listen, sir, we deal with real clients here. This is not a place for games or guesses." Mr. Elijah's hands trembled slightly, but he stayed calm. "I'm not playing, sir. I only came to check my balance." The manager's voice turned cold. "People like you shouldn't be here." The whole bank went silent. Elijah stood still. His face didn't show anger, just deep sadness. He had faced things like this before, judged by how he looked, ignored, dismissed. But it still hurt. He nodded slowly. "All right," he whispered, turning around. As he walked toward the exit, a small tear rolled down his cheek. He wiped it quickly, not wanting anyone to see. He stopped near a chair and sat down. He pulled out a small flip phone from his bag and looked at the screen. There was only one number saved under Family. He hesitated. Then, with trembling fingers, he pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice. Then a deep voice answered. "Hello." Mr. Elijah spoke softly, his voice shaking. "Son, I need you." The phone call lasted less than a minute. After Mr. Elijah whispered, "Son, I need you." He didn't say much more. He quietly ended the call and placed the small flip phone back into his bag. His hands were still shaking. Not because he was afraid, but because he was disappointed. He didn't expect to be treated like a king. He just wanted to be treated like a human. Elijah looked around. The bank was still busy. No one seemed to care that he was sitting alone in the corner. Some employees even looked at him with irritation. like he was a problem waiting to be removed. A few customers gave him strange glances, then looked away quickly. He sighed deeply. Flashback. Years ago, in his mind, he went back to a time when life was even harder. He remembered working 3 jobs just to feed his son, cleaning offices at night, driving an old taxi during the day, fixing broken shoes in between. He never asked for charity, never begged for help. Everything he had, he earned with hard work, and everything he earned, he gave to his son. He remembered his little boy's smile when he came home with a second-hand bicycle. "Papa, is this really for me?" The boy had asked, his eyes wide with joy. Elijah had smiled back. "Yes, my son, you deserve the best." He didn't care if he ate less, slept less, or wore the same clothes every day, as long as his son had a chance at a better life. And his son had made him proud. Back to the present, mister. Elijah sat quietly in the bank lobby, his head slightly lowered. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were red. The hurt was deep, but he held it inside. That's what strong men do. They hold their pain silently. Then, something unexpected happened. Janitor walked by holding a mop. He stopped near Elijah and looked at him with concern. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "Sir," he said softly, "are you okay?" Elijah looked up, surprised. "Yes, thank you," he replied. The janitor handed him a small paper cup of water. "You look tired. Take a sip." Elijah accepted it with shaky hands. "Thank you, son." The janitor smiled. "No problem, sir." "I've seen you here before, right?" Elijah nodded. "Only once. My son asked me to visit this bank if I ever needed something. He set up an account for me." Just then, a sharp voice echoed from across the room. "Hey, you're not here to talk. Get back to work." It was the bank manager. He had noticed the janitor standing near Elijah and wasn't happy about it. The janitor looked down and quickly walked away, but not before giving Elijah a small nod of respect. Elijah finished the water, closed his eyes for a moment, and leaned back in the chair. 10 minutes later, the sound of car tires screeching outside the bank broke the silence. A large, black luxury car stopped in front of the glass doors. It looked out of place in the middle of the day. The driver quickly stepped out and opened the back door. From the car, a tall man stepped out. Sharp suit, shiny shoes, sunglasses, confident walk. He didn't look around. He didn't need to. He already knew where he was going. Inside the bank, Elijah sat unaware. His eyes were closed. He didn't hear the car or the footsteps entering the bank, but the staff did. The security guard stood up straight. The tellers stopped chatting. The manager looked confused. Everyone could feel something had changed. The entrance. The doors opened slowly. The man walked in, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a phone to his ear. He stopped near the center of the bank and looked around, removing his sunglasses. His eyes searched the room until they landed on the old man sitting quietly in the corner. His expression changed instantly, from calm to cold. He ended the phone call, slid the phone into his coat pocket, and walked straight toward the old man. A few steps away from him, he spoke. "Dad." Elijah opened his eyes. His tired face lit up with a gentle smile. "David." Cliffhanger, ending for part 2. The entire bank turned to look. Whispers spread across the room. Did he just say Dad? Wait, is that David Elijah? The billionaire? Before anyone could move or speak, David looked up at the staff and said in a calm but firm voice, "Who treated my father like this?" The room froze. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes were now on David Elijah, the billionaire businessman, known across the country. A man who had built companies, changed industries, and appeared on magazine covers. But here, at this moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He was a son looking at his father with deep respect and quiet rage. Mr. Elijah stood up slowly, surprised to see his son standing right in front of him. His voice was soft and full of emotion. "You came," he whispered. David nodded, his jaw tight. He looked around the bank, scanning every face. "I always will, Dad," he replied. "No matter where you are." Silence in the bank. One of the tellers gasped quietly. Another whispered to her co-worker, "Is that really him? The David Elijah?" The manager, Mr. Douglas, suddenly stood straighter. Sweat began to form on his forehead. His confident look from earlier had disappeared. David turned to the staff near the counters. "Who talked down to my father?" Nobody answered. He stepped forward, his voice sharper now. "My father, Mr. Elijah, walked in here, with respect, with kindness. And what did you give him? Laughter, silence, disrespect?" Tricia, the young teller, looked down at her feet. Flashback. The phone call just 30 minutes earlier. David was in a business meeting with CEOs from Europe. Important deals were being discussed. People were talking about money, stock, numbers. And then his phone rang. He never answered. Unknown. Calls and meetings. But this time he looked at the screen and saw one name. Dad. He didn't hesitate. The moment he heard his father's voice say, "Son, I need you." Everything else became unimportant. He stood up, left the meeting, and told his driver, "We're going to Royal City Bank, now." Back to the present, David walked to the front of the room and stood next to his father. He placed one hand gently on Mr. Elijah's shoulder. Then he looked at the manager. "You're the one in charge here?" Mr. Douglas cleared his throat. "Yes, Mr. Elijah. I apologize for—" David raised his hand. "Save it." The tone of his voice silenced the entire room again. "My father is the reason I'm standing here today. He worked his whole life, as a cleaner, a driver, a cook, so that I could have a future." David's eyes were now locked on the staff. "And today you judged him. Because of his clothes? Because he came here kindly, without showing off? Because he looked too poor for your bank?" Tension builds. Nobody had a response. Tricia stepped forward, stammering, We didn't know who he was." David looked at her, his voice calm but sharp. "You didn't need to know who he was. You needed to treat him like a human." Mr. Elijah quietly said, "David, it's okay. I don't want to cause trouble." David turned to his father and spoke softly. "You're not causing trouble, Dad. They are. And it's time someone reminded them." Big revelation. David took a deep breath. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Hello? Yes. It's time. Go ahead with the deal." He hung up, then looked at the staff once more. "I just bought this bank." The silence broke into gasps. "You bought it?" someone whispered. David nodded. "This bank is now under my company, and the first thing I'll be doing is reviewing every employee here." Cliffhanger ending for part 3. The manager's face went pale. Tricia took a step back, her hands shaking. And the janitor, the only one who had shown Mr. Elijah kindness, stood quietly in the corner, not saying a word. David looked at the staff one last time and said, "You had a chance to treat a great man with respect. And you failed." He turned to his father and gently said, "Come on, Dad, let's take a walk." As they walked out together, hand in hand, the entire bank remained frozen, silent, ashamed, to be continued. Outside the bank, the air was cold but peaceful. David and his father walked slowly down the steps. Mr. Elijah leaned a little on his son's arm. It had been a hard day, but now, something in his heart felt lighter. "Are you angry with them?" Elijah asked gently. David looked straight ahead. "I'm disappointed," he replied, "but not surprised." Elijah nodded. "I've seen this all my life, son. I never had much, but I always tried to stay kind." David stopped walking and looked his father in the eyes. "And that's why you're greater than all of them, Dad. You taught me everything, without ever raising your voice." Flashback. The sacrifices. David remembered being just a boy, watching his father come home late every night, tired, clothes dirty, but always with a smile. He remembered how his father skipped meals so David could eat, how he never bought, Clothes for himself, but always made sure David had clean shoes for school. He remembered the day he saw his father fixing torn trousers with a needle and thread. David had asked, "Why don't you buy new ones, Dad?" And his father smiled. "Because these still work. We don't throw away what still has value." David never forgot that line. Now, years later, he looked at the very people who had judged that same man as worthless, just because of his appearance. Back inside the bank. Meanwhile, inside. The bank panic had started to grow. Staff were whispering. Phones were buzzing. Everyone had heard what David Elijah said. "I just bought this bank." The manager, Mr. Douglas, tried calling the regional office, but the line was already busy. Emails from head office had started to come in. The subject line read, "Urgent, Elijah Financial Holdings, ownership transition." Douglas's hands shook as he read the memo. It was real. David Elijah's company had officially taken control. The janitor's moment in the corner, the janitor, Mr. Ray, quietly continued mopping the floor. He had always done his job with pride, even if no one noticed him. But today, someone had. A junior staff member whispered to him, "You were nice to that old man, huh? Guess that paid off." Ray didn't say much, he just nodded and smiled. Deep down, he wasn't kind for reward. He was kind because it was right. Outside, a promise. David and Mr. Elijah sat on a bench near the bank. The sound of passing cars filled the air. "I never wanted your money," Elijah said quietly. "I know," David replied. "You never even asked for anything." Elijah looked at his son with soft, proud eyes. "All I ever wanted was for you to live with dignity and to treat others with it too." David reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. "I brought something for you." Elijah opened it. Inside was a gold pin with David's company logo. "What's this for?" he asked. "It's not just a gift," David said. "It's a symbol. From now on, you're the honorary chairman of Elijah Financial Holdings. Wherever you walk, people will know who you are." Elijah chuckled. "I don't need all that, son." David smiled. "Maybe not, but the world does. The world needs to see what a great man looks like." Back at the bank, justice begins. An hour later, a black SUV pulled up to the bank. Two men in suits stepped out. They were senior executives from David's company. They walked inside, holding a list. "Where is Mr. Douglas?" One of them asked firmly. The manager came forward, sweating. "We're here to start the employee review," the man said. "We have instructions from Mr. David Elijah." Douglas gulped. "Every staff member will be questioned," the man continued. "But first, we're looking for one person." The staff exchanged nervous glances. Then the man said, "Where is the janitor?" Cliffhanger ending. Part 4. Everyone turned to look at Ray, who stood holding his mop. "Yes, sir," he said, calmly. The executive walked up to him and shook his hand. "Mr. Elijah wanted us to tell you this personally. You were the only one who did the right thing." Gasps filled the room. Ray stood in shock, his eyes wide. The executive smiled and said, "You're being promoted, effective immediately. To be continued." Inside the bank, the atmosphere changed completely. The janitor, Mr. Ray, stood quietly as the senior executive spoke. The whole staff watched in stunned silence. "Mr. Ray," the executive said kindly, "your kindness did not go unnoticed. You showed respect when others failed." Ray blinked, surprised. "Thank you, sir. I just did what felt right." "That's exactly why we're promoting you," the executive continued. "From today, you are the new head of facilities here at Royal City Bank, with a proper salary, benefits, and respect." The room filled with whispers. Some smiled. Some nodded, proud of the janitor who had done the right thing. A moment of celebration, David Elijah smiled proudly at Ray. He turned to the bank staff and said firmly, "This is the kind of behavior we want in this bank. Kindness, respect, and honesty." The manager, Mr. Douglas, looked down at his shoes, unable to meet anyone's eyes. David continued, "And for those who failed my father, There will be consequences. We will change how things work here. Elijah, sitting beside his son, felt a small joy in his heart. For the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. A lesson learned later that day, David stood with his father outside the bank. "Dad," David said, "this is just the beginning. We will make sure respect is the new rule." Elijah smiled. "I'm proud of you, son." David looked at his father and promised, "I will always stand by you, no matter what." Elijah nodded, tears of happiness in his eyes. Looking forward as they walked away, the staff inside the bank talked about the change. Maybe things will be different now. Maybe this bank will finally treat everyone with respect. Cliffhanger ending. Part 5. But deep inside, the manager knew his job was in danger, and the question remained, would this story end here, or was there more to come, to be continued? Inside the bank, tension filled the air. The manager, Mr. Douglas, sat nervously in his office. His phone buzzed non-stop with messages from David Elijah's company. He knew his time was running out. The investigation, 2 senior executives from Elijah Financial Holdings arrived to start interviews. One by one, they called the staff to answer questions about how Mr. Elijah was treated. Many were ashamed. Some tried to explain, others stayed silent. The executives listened carefully, taking notes. Facing the truth, Tricia, the young teller who had accused Mr. Elijah, sat trembling in the interview room. She looked down, unable to meet the eyes of the executives. I didn't mean to be rude," she said quietly. One executive replied, "Intentions don't matter as much as actions. Respect is a right for everyone." The manager's end finally, the executives called Mr. Douglas. He walked into the room, trying to appear confident but failing. "We have reviewed all reports," one executive said firmly. "Your behavior and the way your staff treated Mr. Elijah have violated company values." Douglas swallowed hard. "We have no choice but to terminate your employment. Effective immediately." Douglas stood in silence, shocked. A new beginning. Meanwhile, Mr. Ray, now promoted, stood proudly in his new office. David Elijah visited him and said, "You've earned this, Ray. Your kindness and respect made the difference." Ray smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Elijah. I promise to keep this place clean and respectful." The bank's transformation with new leadership, the bank changed quickly. Training sessions were held. New rules for customer respect were created. Employees learned that kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength. Cliffhanger ending, Part 6. But not everyone was happy. Some former employees whispered in corners, planning quietly. The question hung in the air. Would the bank truly change? Or would old habits die hard? To be continued. Months had passed since David Elijah bought the bank. The changes inside Royal City Bank were clear. Employees smiled more. Customers were treated kindly. Respect was the new rule. A father and son's pride one afternoon. David and his father, Mr. Elijah, visited the bank together. They walked through the halls, watching how things had changed. Elijah smiled softly. "This is more than I ever hoped for." David put his arm around his father's shoulder. "You taught me the meaning of respect, Dad. Now the world sees it too." The new manager. The bank had a new manager, someone chosen carefully by David Elijah. She was kind but strong, and she believed in treating everyone with dignity. Under her leadership, the bank continued to grow, not just in money but in heart. Ray's journey. Ray, the janitor turned head of facilities, was now a respected leader. He helped train new employees on respect and kindness. When someone new joined, Ray always said, "Treat everyone like family. That's how we succeed." A lesson for all. The story of Mr. Elijah's visit became a lesson told to every new employee. It reminded everyone that true greatness isn't about money or power. It's about kindness, respect, and standing up for what is right. Last question. As David and Elijah left the bank that day, Elijah turned and asked softly, "Son, do you think the world will ever truly change?" David looked out at the busy city streets. He smiled and said, "I believe it can, one small act of kindness at a time.